Welcome to Fundraising Leaders with Drew, where we embark on a journey to discover the heart and soul of nonprofit fundraising and decode the strategies that lead to fundraising success. I'm your host, Drew Clancy, and today I am grateful to be joined by Dr. Alison Morrison-Shetlar, the 11th President of the University of Lynchburg, and the first woman and first foreign-born President of the university. Raised in Scotland, Dr. Morrison-Shetlar moved to the United States in 1993. Prior to being named president at Lynchburg, she served as provost and vice chancellor at Western Carolina University and dean of Elon College. Let's jump right in with President Morrison-Shetlar. Well, welcome, President Morrison-Shetlar. I understand that on campus everybody calls you President Alison, and so I'll refer to you that way here today. But thank you very much for being part of our podcast and talking about unique, innovative fundraising strategies that you are using at Lynchburg. And so let's jump right in. Sort of a kind of a high level question. What are your top fundraising priorities for the university currently? And how have these priorities evolved over time?
So my top three priorities for the University of Lynchburg are to really increase the number of endowed scholarships that we have for our students. It's really important that we can provide scholarships so that education can be affordable for everyone. And so that is a top priority for me. The second one is a probably more unique one in that when I started the comprehensive campaign in my first week or so on campus back in August 2020, I really wanted people to find their passions. And so we've really focused on programmatic support so that anyone who had a passion for a particular area of the campus, whether it was the EI initiatives or their art program or their degree in business or finance, that they could then really say, this is where I want my money to go and this is where I want the biggest impact. And that really has helped us tremendously in engaging more people. And the third part of the comprehensive campaign is obviously some facilities that we have to have renovated. One is our Hobbs Ziegler Natural Science Building, and the other is what we call 5 for the Hive. So it's 5 projects within the athletics area. Those are the only physical plant areas that we have. The rest, I say, programmatic support and endowments are really what we're focusing in on. And that's what's drawing more and more people to the University of Lynchburg to provide their resources to support our students' success.
Love that. Let's talk a little bit about the strategies that you are using to meet these fundraising goals. What innovative strategies are you and the university using to engage donors to increase overall philanthropic support?
As I mentioned, the programmatic support has really been a key people to address that sort of what brings people to the table. And when we announced that programmatic support was going to be very important, as well as, of course, endowed scholarships, we really found people sort of saying, so what can I do? What is it that you're interested in? What do you need, right? And so we flipped that and said, it's not what we need, it's what your passion is. What do you want to make that, how's that impact going to be for you? Do you want to do endowed professorships? Do you want to do endowed scholarships for a particular program? Do you just want to give the university some resources to be able to say, I want this to go to nursing, and we decide what happens with those resources? And that really changed the way people looked at giving at Lynchburg, because we had for the longest time only been doing capital campaigns. And so if you weren't interested in bricks and mortar, then you weren't interested in giving to the institution. So we flipped that with a comprehensive campaign that then everybody should be able to see themselves in that campaign and therefore see the impact that they'll have at the university. That has brought to us close to 300 to 500 new donors a year.
Wow.
starting with small gifts, but also very large gifts. One particular story I have here is that we have an alum, a woman, who really had nothing to do with the institution for the longest time. She came into the University of Lynchburg, or then Lynchburg College, as an access student. So she was an adult working full time, wanted to get her degree. It took her a little longer because she was doing it at nights and at weekends. But that really transformed her life. And she was very, very successful. Her husband was very, very successful. And until we started the comprehensive campaign, she really was not engaged with the philanthropic component of our institution. But then she came and she said, well, I'm really interested in this case, counselor education. That's my background. What can I do? And so we were able to lay out a plan for her that was within the realms of what she wanted to give. And as a result, we received one of our most major gifts in recent history from that particular person. So it's getting people to their passion and showing them that it doesn't have to be a very large gift. It can be, any gift is going to be transformational, even a small one, because it can be used to then ask other people for additional gifts towards that project. So I think the key is following people's passion.
So good. Love that. Love that. How do you go about discovering the passions of different alumni? How do you see that from a process or from a system standpoint?
Well, it's a couple of ways. If it's a kind of cold call situation, which sometimes I find myself in, I really just start to tell people about the exciting things that are happening at the institution. And at the University of Lynchburg, we have so many great things that are happening as we grow and evolve as an institution, and really making sure that everything that we do, the students are at the center of everything that we do, right? And so, again, I'll give you a little bit of an example. I was visiting a gentleman that I had never really met before, but I knew he had given something to the institution in prior years, but really hadn't been engaged for quite a while. And I spent about an hour and a half with him. And for the first hour, I was just saying how exciting things were. And this is a new program, and this is a new idea. And this is where we're seeing growth in our institution, all the sort of numbers that people want to hear. And he was very, so that was nice. Oh, yeah, that's nice. And literally 10 minutes before we were leaving to go off to our next visit, I mentioned that we had an equestrian center and that we had moved from sharing facilities to our own facility, and really growing with a great new coach who was bringing in, not only donations but all great students, etc. And his whole demeanor changed.
Wow!
And he said, "Oh, my wife departed at this point in time. She was so enjoyed equestrian work. She had her own horses. No, that would be great. So what do you need for that?" And so after an hour of sort of, oh, that's interesting, to get to, oh, here's something that I can get behind. So a lot of time, if you don't know somebody, it's really discovery. And telling them about the institution and the exciting things that are happening till you find that thing that they're really passionate about. My preference, of course, is that people within the advancement office do some of that research beforehand, if possible, to find out what people are passionate about. And then I come in and really, with a lot of data and information, share with them what's going on. And that happens, periodically as well. But I think you have to be adaptable in this environment, particularly today, because we have more people who are being philanthropic, but there are also more people who are giving more if they know that the institution is going to use their resources wisely. And I think having examples of those kinds of situations, how do we use our resources? How do we know that the students who are impacted are going to get back to the donor and tell them, how much they appreciate them? Those kinds of connections are really, really important.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, the whole idea of impact reporting obviously is something that's important. Let's say in the case, the wonderful story about the equestrian program and so forth, how do you go about, communicating back and staying in touch with that donor and, continuing that conversation?
Well, I think, again, if somebody's going to give you some money that's going to make an impact, you've got to show them what that impact is. And in the case of the
Right.
Equestrian Centre, we were doing a lot of building. We were going basically from having 12 horses and 24 students. We wanted to get up to 36 horses and, close to 50 or 60 students. And so as we were growing and building, we would take videos of the students and they take videos of the construction, send them to the individual, make sure they had photographs, etc. All of those things, just keeping them connected. And frequently saying, are we sending too much information or do you want more information? What's the balance? And you have to get the right balance with donors because you don't want to hound them with things, but equally you don't want them to feel like they don't know what's going on. So I think it's finding that balance simply by asking them. I found that's the easiest thing rather than trying to guess what they want. Just sort of saying, okay,
Sure.
I'm sending you something once a month. Is that too much? And usually they get back and say, no, I'd love to see what's going on and thank you for keeping me connected. And often, quite honestly, once you see a project coming to completion and you see the impact that it's having on the students, the donors often turn around and say, what can I do now?
Sure. You mentioned the development office, and obviously that's a partnership working with you. From your role as president, is there any, in terms of organizing the development office, the alumni affairs office, how do you see that in terms of sort of the really critical areas and responsibilities and so forth?
Well, I've gone through quite a transformation with the advancement team, as we call it, that here at the University of Lynchburg. When I arrived, we had about 21 people in the advancement office, and we're bringing in, a reasonable amount, but not to about $5 million a year, which for us had been, okay, fairly consistent.
Right.
What I found was that there was a lot of either duplication or people weren't really honed in or focused on their particular goals. And so I brought the whole team together and sat down and said, okay, I want to start a comprehensive campaign. This is my goals. I would like to do it in this amount of time. And so what are your thoughts and how do we get there? So really sort of giving it to them to say, okay, they're part of the planning, they're part of the process. And through that, we found out that we could really hone things a little bit better, identify the people who really could get out there and make sure they had strong portfolios, make sure that they followed up with those portfolios on a regular basis. And as a result, we've actually now got 14 people in the advancement office, and we're bringing in $7 to $8 million a year. And every year it's gone up by $1 million for the last 3 years. So I think it's again, getting people on board with what you're trying to achieve, setting goals, and then making sure that the people involved are doing the right thing by our donors. And we also really put someone in place to look at that sort of middle group of people who, not the $10 to $100 or $1,000, and not the, $500,000 to $1 million donors. But what about those people in the middle who have been sort of consistently or inconsistently giving, finding out what that sort of hook is to get them to think about, well, I gave, $2,000 here. Next year, I'll give $5,000. The year after that, $10,000, etc. And that's been proven to be very, very expensive, very, very successful, rather. And it's again engaging people in ways that we've never really engaged them before. One of the sort of stories I can tell about this is, of course, I started this presidency in the middle of COVID, and therefore it was very difficult to get out and do alumni events or that kind of thing. And so one of the unique things that we did was we went online like everybody else did, but we did it by category. So we brought all the theatre alumni together in one Zoom meeting, and it was through the generations.
Yeah.
And so we really had great conversations. Again, I was able to tell people what was happening at the institution. I was a new president. I was, of course, very excited, as I still am, about the institution. And that got quite infectious. And so people started to, get more engaged. And as I said, we sort of started having, 500 more donors a year, more people interested in being part of the institution. Our alumni are starting to come back to the institution. and when they see what's happening, are giving because of that. So I met
Sure.
between the time I started and probably the end of my first year and a half, I had met 1,500 people online. Wow. Literally every evening, Monday through Thursday, sitting from 7 to 8:30 with, one-on-one or groups of people. And that was hugely successful in engaging people.
Wow. Wow. I'll bet. I love that commitment. And let's explore a little bit about specifically as president, and different university presidents have different philosophies around fundraising. I can tell already that this is important to you and something that you're passionate about. What do you see as your role as a fundraiser, and how much time do you dedicate to it? How do you are there trade-offs you see? How do you think about it?
So I think as president, you have to balance being on campus and being seen and being part of what's going on, and then being out on the road. During COVID, I wasn't able to go out on the road. So I used the technology to do things while still being seen on campus, in fact, more on campus than I normally would have been. I really think for a president, 50% or more of the time should be fundraising. I feel like I fundraise every day with every conversation that I have.
Yeah.
Whether it's the students and getting them on their philanthropic pathway, talking about the impact that other donors have had and what their lives have been on campus. And so I'd say starting them early and all the way through to people who haven't been engaged with the institution and getting them back onto campus. So our homecomings, for example, are completely different now because we invite families, we invite the parents of students, we invite alumni. It becomes a 2,000 or 3,000 person event for our institution. And they start to see the impact that each of them have had on this institution. So we're seeing more parents donating to the institution because they're a part of it. And of course, during things like that, I have receptions, I have events. But more importantly for me, and just again, my personality, I like to be out amongst. I walk through homecoming. I don't have a tent where you come and visit the president. I'm in there with everybody. And again, I think every conversation is a fundraising opportunity. And therefore, if you could think about it, I do 100% of my time. More formally, I'm on the road. And again, that depends on the time of year. There are times where I need to be on campus more. But I have been using technology more than ever to get to know people. That first contact can often be done through this kind of medium. And then after that, it's great to go and visit with them. Some people prefer just to have these kinds of conversations using the technology. Others are really happy to see you and in person. And so knowing who the people are and what their own schedules are, it really dictates how I interact with them. But my philosophy is every person has the potential to give to the institution with their time, their talent, their networks, and their treasure. And often the time, talent, and networks are the first entry into then being talking about their treasure.
Love it. What about, let's talk about challenges. We talked about lots and lots of successes so far. What do you see as your biggest challenge specifically in the fundraising arena right now? Maybe something you'd like to be even better at, or an area where you see the greatest opportunity for growth and so forth. You mentioned the mid-level giving. I mean, that sounds like something where you put a lot of your attention. Are there other areas that you see as real opportunities?
I definitely see that working with women in philanthropy is an area that I want to be able to grow. We know that women are really the philanthropic folks behind most families. They are known to be often the deciders, but it's then often another member of the family that would be the name behind things. Women don't tend to want to necessarily have their names associated with everything. They don't have that kind of ego, and they just want to be able to give and see that their giving has a lot of impact. So I feel like
Sure.
women are really an area where I think we as an institution can do more, especially since, for decades we've been a 60-40, 60% women, 40% male institution, which is fairly typical for private institutions. So I feel like that's an area where I would like to engage more women in the philanthropic process. And then they, in that nation, then also help their family, their siblings. They bring other family members into these kinds of things. And we've had quite a bit of success with that, but I think there's greater opportunity there. And certainly the data nationally shows that that's an area where there is a lot of money that can be garnered. You just, again, got to find that passion, got to find that place where women particularly want to make a big impact. They want to make sure that their dollars are doing what they want them to do.
Sure. Again, getting back to that impact reporting and sharing that. And I mean, it's beginning with the conversation to understand what someone's passionate about, obviously the gift itself, but then doing a really good job afterwards it's just kind of common sense too, to continue the conversation and show the impact so far. And who knows, maybe other opportunities to continue to, support the university. Looking out, let's say 5-10 years, are there trends in fundraising that you're excited about, or there's that great quote by Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, who said, people always ask me, what's the new thing? What's changing? What's exciting? And he says, that's really the wrong question. The better question is, what's not going to change, right? And one thing that's not going to change probably is that institutions, universities, nonprofits are going to need to continue to raise money. That said, are there things you're excited about or looking to invest in, maybe new strategies, innovative things, perhaps on the horizon?
Well, we're always evolving, and I think that's what
Right.
people need to know about. They're always evolving. You're always looking to see, is the next discipline AI? Is the next discipline some component? Things that you don't even think about now might happen in 5 years' time. I think the key here is you've got to be nimble. You've got to be able to adapt and modify. And we find that we have gifts that we've had from people that are so specific that it's almost hard to give the money away, right? Particularly in scholarships. And so in the future, and what we've been doing is going back to people and saying, you want the scholarship or this particular endowment to be for this particular thing. Well, that no longer exists, or there's not a lot of energy in that, or we have to move away from that. Would you be willing to sort of open this up? And so the trend has very much been, certainly in the last decade or so, I want to give to a left-handed trombone player from Amherst County in Virginia. And I'm serious. Sure. We have a lot of those. And and now we want to say to people, well, we want you to give to something that's going to have a big impact, and we're working on this or we're working on that. We would love to be able to do, something bigger or better or different. And so flexibility to me is the biggest part of any gift that comes into the institution. Because otherwise you have to go back to the donor and say, let's change this because there's no left-handed trombone players from Amherst anymore. And so let's move your money. And I think a lot of institutions, and we've certainly been doing this, they're looking very hard at the money that they have and finding out that there's money that has never been given out or is not doing any work for the institution. And as I say, we've found that, and we're modifying that. And going back to donors, it takes a lot of time, and especially if they're no longer living, then there's a whole system that you have to go through to get those criteria changed. So I think the future is people giving, but with flexibility, and then stewarding that gift really, really well so that people know that the impact that they're having is good, but also flexible. And, we would love to have
Sure.
more endowed professorships because that brings in great people into those positions. But we want to have more money for our students to be successful so that they can have some experiences that they might not be able to afford, that they might be able to come to the institution because there's an endowed scholarship for them there that will help them through the next 4 years so they don't have to worry so much about funding their education. There's so many things that you have to let donors know about, but you also have to be very, very nimble and expect the
Sure.
donors to understand that, but steward it so well that they completely understand when you divert some of their resources to be more impactful in a new kind of thing that's coming along.
Sure. Sure. Um, in the kind of stewardship recognition area, is there any kind of stories or strategies, or how do you see that? It's an important part, obviously, of philanthropy, or can be.
Yes, I think it's essential. The stewardship is essential. And again, it depends on the groups. There's a group that I have that just absolutely loves getting together and talking amongst each other about their philanthropy for the institution. So almost becomes a little bit of a competition. And so getting
Yeah,
them together and talking about the impact, or me talking about the impact that each of their gifts have done to the institution, is wonderful. So you got to know the people. Others are
mm,
very, very, this is, I don't want anybody to know my name. I just want to be anonymous, but just tell me about the impact. So much like you're trying to find somebody's passion, you also want to be very, very cognizant of how people do approach their own philanthropic journey. And
sure.
so I've been, I'd like to meet people. They seem to like to meet me. And so there's times where I'll go to people's homes and we'll have one-on-one chats for an afternoon over a cup of tea. There are other times where we get groups of people together and they really, really, come together and make a big impact. And a good example of that is I had challenged some of our coaches in our athletics program to think about an endowed programmatic support for that particular team. And we were very, very fortunate that they were very innovative, very much beloved coach in our lacrosse team. And they
Sure.
steward their alumni really well. I mean, weekly emails out to this group to say, how well the team is doing during the season, etc. And then one of the things I challenged, we said, okay, let's do an endowment for lacrosse. And because of the relationships that the coach had with the alumni, 4 or 5 alumni came together and really started this endowed programmatic support. And
Sure.
as of now, we're at $500,000 by bringing people in. So again, it's about finding people's passion, and in this case, it's around lacrosse and being an alum of the lacrosse team.
Sure.
And it's been tremendous. Again, we just had a big check signing to get over the $500,000, which is what programmatic endowment is for us at the University of Lynchburg. So that inspired somebody in the soccer arena to say, well, listen, I'll do the same. Here's $100,000, right, to start the endowment for soccer. That seems to feed things. So again, getting that information out, making sure that people understand the impact. I'm starting to see people sort of say, well, what about this sport? What about softball? What about this?
Sure. You get that kind of healthy competition again, perhaps.
Right. Exactly. So, I'm all for competition on the field and court, but I love it when there's competition in the philanthropy arena as well. So those are the kinds of strategies. Donors, you have to treat each donor the way they want to be treated. So it is an individualized kind of approach, but it's also great to be able to see, if you use something like our board of trustees, 100% giving on Give Day. So be able to say to people, our board gave 100%. What about you? Would you be willing to do a stretch gift or a matching gift? And every gift day that we've had since I arrived has been better every year. More donors coming to the table, more money coming to the university, but more excitement about what's happening at the institution, I think, is just as important.
Love it. President Alison, one of the questions I like to ask is around your learning and As you've come up with new strategies and so forth, are there people that have mentored you or that perhaps you look up to? Maybe it could be books you're reading or have read, or how do you kind of stay on that, keeping the, sharpening the saw, I guess, as Stephen Covey used to say.
Yeah.
How do you see that? How do you try to get better at this?
Well, practice is always a good thing. So I like to practice as much as I possibly can, which means reaching out to people that have not been affiliated with the university and really honing my own skills. I have really great support. So, understanding the donor well before you go and speak with them. What do they not like? What do they, what should you not talk about? What can you talk about? Having a really, really great team. And I've watched a lot of people who've been very successful in the philanthropic journey build a really strong team, support team, who are going in and connecting with people. That first conversation, for example, doesn't have to be me, although currently I've been doing a little bit more of that because I'm trying to get more out there and into people's homes to talk with them about the institution as we evolve as an institution. And so having that support team is really, really important. But just knowing what the university is all about, the direction of the university, the exciting things that are happening, the more I find that I talk about that, the numbers, everybody's worried about enrollment. So I can talk about, we went from 20 international students 18 months ago, and now we have 220 international students on campus. So we're diversifying our community. We have a number of affinity groups on campus. So the things that, people didn't have when they were at the institution back when it was Lynchburg College. I think you have to educate yourself about what it is that you want for the institution and really be able to sell that. And I've watched a lot of people who have been successful in doing that. And so quite happily steal their ideas and approaches and then put, a good Scottish turn to that. I do think my accent has quite a lot to do with things. People seem to like to hear my accent, whether they listen to what I'm talking about. I'm not quite sure, but there's some little hooks that you can have with people. Everybody seems to have a Scottish relative or affiliation with Scotland. So using the strategies that fit best with me and how they then can be adapted to each individual donor, I think is really important. But I don't tend to read a lot of books because I think philanthropy is moving too fast to really think a little bit about that. But I think the essence of how do you interact with people? How do you make sure that you find what their passion is, and how do you engage them? What level of engagement is important at what time in that philanthropic journey is important? And I've been at this for a little while. I've done a lot of government work, relations work to get funding from cities and states to do things when I was in the public arena. I've just adapted a lot of those strategies to the private arena, and they seem to be working pretty well. Since we're more than 2/3 of our way through our comprehensive campaign goal and very, very close to going public with what we're doing because these strategies seem to be working.
That's such a great story. Maybe one last question. Again, kind of looking at universities, of course, are facing competition for donors, not only from other institutions, perhaps, that the individual may have attended, but also, obviously, there's a vast number of charities and nonprofit organizations vying for those donors. How do you see, in terms of, in business, we use the term value proposition. How do you try to communicate that? The importance of the university versus, other causes that are out there?
Well, number one, contributions are primarily to people's churches. So that's the number one. Education, thankfully, is number two. At least it was when I last looked. So being able to say to people, we would like to be in your top 3 philanthropic gifts locations.
Sure.
And here's why. And it's particularly good with parents, for example, because they see the impact that the institution has had on their child. And so that's one pathway into that. But, there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of ways in which people can sell their value added. We show it by the kind of students that we produce at the University of Lynchburg. They are leaders. They're collaborative. They're innovative. They really understand diversity, equity and inclusion, social justice and belonging. And as a result, they go out and be leaders in our community or in their communities. And they take the name of the institution out with them and tell people about them. They are our biggest ambassadors because these are as I say, these are the leaders. If you come to Lynchburg and go to any nonprofit, business, government office, you will find a Lynchburg grad at the top of their field.
Sure.
Because we produce really, really well-rounded people who can be adaptable to whatever the future may bring. And so making sure that we are focusing in on those things and telling those stories. The stories are the key, and the student stories are the key. And so if you can get to people's hearts through the student stories, then you get to the point where they can also say, this is why we want to give to the University of Lynchburg. We're finding that to be very, very successful. We've got a new vision, mission, and value statement that we brought out April 18th. And we talk about producing leaders who then develop caring communities, right? We want trustworthy people who are fair and equitable and understand what it's like to be part of our community. And as we see our grads go out and do those things, people see that impact that the education at the University of Lynchburg has given them and that they have earned, and that they're doing things out in the community that really are caring, trustworthy, and quite honestly, ethical and moral. And people want to invest in that. So there's your value, is the people that you produce from your institutions with degrees that are great in their discipline, but their characters are really what makes them successful. And that's what we build at the University of Lynchburg. And that's what I think attracts people to give to the university, because the experience that our students get really are exceptional.
Wow, what a great way to conclude and wrap up. So powerful. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your wisdom. And this has been really delightful.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to do this. It is a passion of mine. Education is a passion of mine. And if anybody's out there listening, regardless of where it is, think about where you got your education, whether it's your high school or your local community college or a university or a training college. It doesn't matter. Just remember that a little bit of money can make an impact in a lot of people's lives. And that's an important thing, to be able to go to bed at night and know that you've made an impact in this world.
Hear, hear. Thank you.
Thank you.